Okay, good afternoon, everybody. I'm going to formally start the session. Just so you know, what we do for the Teaching Toolkits is we record the presentation. We do not record the Q&A, so we are inviting you to join us after the session and pose questions to our two presenters today. And I'm delighted to say that in respect of our two presenters today, they are part of the Student as Partners here in UCD Teaching and Learning. So we run this little kind of project for the last few years, and it has proven extremely successful because of the students and their endeavors and efforts. So I am delighted to introduce Nama and Oakley, who are going to be talking about intercultural learning, supporting international students, student learning. So without too much ado, as I say, what is going to happen, if you're not familiar with our teaching toolkits, is there is a short presentation from Nama and Oakley. They're going to kind of talk about various kind of aspects of intercultural learning, and we will be sharing resources and such, and I will post links during the session. We will, of course, send you out the slide deck with all those links as well after the fact. And then once the presentation is complete, there is an opportunity to have a little kind of chat amongst ourselves. Any questions that arise, our student as partners will be delighted to answer them as best they can and kind of give you any insights. So without further ado, I am going to hand over to Nama and Oakley.
So, hi everyone. Thank you for joining us today. My name is Nima Ashour. I'm currently doing my master's in equality study here at UCD, and I'm also a student partner, as mentioned by David, in the teaching and learning unit. I'm originally from Gaza, and before coming to UCD, I worked as a teacher with UNRWA. So education has always been at the center of my life, but maybe just in different context. Coming to Ireland as an international student has been a journey of its own. And this experience is a big part of why this topic feels so important to me personally. So now I'll hand over to my colleague Oakley to introduce herself. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Nima, and hello, everyone. My name is Oakley Wisniewska. I'm a final year undergraduate English with creative writing student. I am also a student partner here at UCD Teaching and Learning. And before joining UCD, I studied in Poland, both through the national curriculum and international baccalaureate diploma program. Last year, I also spent a semester abroad at the University of Zurich in Switzerland. And all of those different educational experiences also make me very passionate about the question of intercultural learning. Thank you.
Wonderful. Thank you, Oakley. So here is a quick overview of what we'll be covering today. We will start with a definition. What do we actually mean by intercultural learning? Then we will move into some observations like what are international students really experiencing? And from there, we will look at actions and resources and practical things that can make a real difference.
Okay, and just to look at the objectives for today's session, we will discuss what it means to belong as an international student and how to help foster that sense of belonging in the classroom. Then we'll also cover how to recognize student diversity, specifically at the intersection of culture and educational backgrounds. Finally, we'll also think about how to embrace that diversity for classroom interactions and curriculum design as well.
Okay, so next, please, David. Yeah. So let's start with what we actually mean by intercultural learning. The definition we are looking at here describe it as the opportunities and experiences of working with and learning from people across different cultures. But there is something I really feel it's important to note is the word with. It's not for, not about, but with. For me, this word suggests something mutual, something that goes in both directions. It's not just about international students adapting to fit in here by themselves, but about everyone learning from each other.
Exactly. And just like to underline the importance of intercultural learning here at UCD specifically, I want to give a brief overview of some statistics. So over the last few years, we've seen a major increase in international students in Irish higher education broadly. According to a report by Higher Education Authority, the number has more than doubled since 2007. And at UCD specifically, currently we have roughly 35% of international students out of the entire student body. And here we're thinking about full-time international students, but also all those international that might be studying at UCD as part of Erasmus or other student mobility programs. And interestingly, and I think this is really important for thinking about like this mutual interaction that Nima has highlighted, is that we have like quite a diverse staff as well. According to like the statistics, the very same one as with the students, 39 of staff here at UCD is international. And taking all of those statistics into account, there is a real need to embrace cultural university at UCD, to embody its global, but not just through statistics or slogans, but for a real lived intercultural approach to learning, one that is visible in assessment, learning outcomes, the curriculum, but also very like everyday classroom interactions and supports that are available.
So moving to the next part of our presentation today, we want to highlight that starting university is a big transition for any student. But for international students, this transition has many, many more layers, and the complexities are doubled. And that is what our observations are about today. Yes, let's start with the first observation. When an international student arrives, the world as they know has changed for them completely, maybe. And it's not just for them a new country, but it's a new cultural order. The way people dress, the food, the humor, the way conversations flow, the unspoken rules of how to behave in a shop, on a bus, or in the seminar room. And nobody hands you these guides. You just need to figure this out by yourself. And alongside that, the sense of yourself has shifted too, because you have left behind your family, your closest friends, and maybe your whole identity almost. And this can be quite a massive cultural shock, particularly for students, like from my own experience, for students coming from developed countries or small cities, and they arrive to this different, huge, big, developed environment. Also here, loneliness and isolation. I think it is worth naming these two definitions separately because they are not the same thing. Isolation can be structural, not having the networks, not being included, while loneliness is very emotional. It's like being surrounded by people and still feeling profoundly alone. So I feel that international students sometimes experience this at the same time, both of them. So all of this, the cultural shock, the loneliness, the homesickness, the overwhelming of everything, they don't arrive gradually. They just like hit you from day one. And this is called culturative stress. But behind that term, those are students who are sitting in the classrooms and they carry all of this. So it's worth like sitting with this. Next, please, David. Yeah. So having sat with some of what international students carry, I would like to share some thoughts on what might help, both in the classroom and beyond. In the classroom, one of the simplest things is to make like the unwritten rules clear or written, because what feels obvious to us is not like to somebody coming from a completely different academic culture or environment. Like something as small as student's name may signal to them that they belong here. I know this sounds simple, but actually it does make a difference. Also, it might also be worth remembering that silence is not always disengagement. For many students, staying quiet comes from a place of uncertainty or cultural difference, not lack of interest. So, a quiet check-in with that student can mean the world to them at that moment. Also, reducing cognitive load is another small but meaningful step by being clear about deadlines, explaining formats, and offering early feedback can ease a great deal of anxiety. Now, moving beyond the classroom, I think one of the most powerful things we can do is simply like signpost early and often. Many students don't know that UCD counseling or student advisors or peer monitoring are available, or maybe they feel they are not meant for them. This happened to me actually. And so direct mention from a trusted staff member can change that. So like actively directing students to UCD also global and societies can also help with that sense of connection and community that we spoke about earlier. This is very helpful. The societies and UCD Global, they do many activities and events that like collect people together, people of the same interests, of the same culture, and this helped a lot. And also, for anyone who would like to explore this further, UCD Teaching and Learning Resources and Policy offers some really valuable guidance on intercultural teaching.
Great. Thank you, Nama. I'll now move on to the recognition of diverse educational backgrounds. So in classroom communication, there often exists this assumption that everyone has followed a similar educational path before joining the module. And in my experience, something that was especially prevalent in first year module was the kind of statement like, I'm sure you've studied X for Leaving Cert. I'm sure you did this in Living Cert. And picking up on Nama's points about belonging, these kind of messages do not really foster belonging. If you've studied a different program and you hear that kind of message, your educational background remains unacknowledged, and it's like another element of feeling you're being silently othered. And just to highlight, this kind of assumption can be ignorant of people who are not international students as well, but might have like otherwise different backgrounds, whether because they're mature students or have found themselves in some unconventional circumstances. In reality, students have in fact studied in very, very different environments. This can mean different cities and school types. That's also very, very important. But chiefly what we want to highlight here is different programs, different national programs, ones that might not be Anglophone and or not the Leaving Certificate. And thus, there is a real need to acknowledge that educational diversity with all its implications. Different educational backgrounds, for one, can mean that students have studied different curricula, are familiar with different cultural canons and perspectives. In my experience, from my perspective as an English major, this might mean that different students have a different definition, different sense of what is considered a classic, a must-read, a kind of staple cultural references. And if everyone is speaking in a different cultural code, it might be harder for them to understand the module content. Another implication of diverse education backgrounds might be the language diversity. even if at the moment all the students are studying a specific subject for English, it doesn't mean that they have studied it for English beforehand. I've heard from my friends, some of whom went to Irish language schools, that they've struggled with English language subject-specific vocabulary. They knew the terms, they knew the concepts, but they didn't know them through English. And I'm sure this might be a familiar experience for people who haven't studied through English before. Lastly, I want to highlight how different educational backgrounds prioritize different learning modes and assessment styles. So again, different students, depending on their background, will be used to different things. In this case, different learning activities. Some systems prioritize in-person exams, so take-home assignments. In Poland, where I come from, for example, the educational system puts a bigger emphasis on summative in-person assessment. So as you can see, there are many, many dimensions to students' diverse educational backgrounds. And as I said multiple times before, there is real need to address that diversity and not to assume anything, but to ask students about their experiences and acknowledge that diversity. Next. Oh, yeah, thank you. Okay, and how that asking and acknowledging might look in practice. From a staff member's individual standpoint, it is firstly important to just get to know your students. Again, very simple, but really, really important. You need to know, you need to get to know your students, but also get to know their educational background that's relevant to the class. In a similar way, one might also feel inclined to introduce themselves. Where did they study? Why are they teaching that particular module? How they learned? What are their experiences? Again, to foster that mutual exchange of ideas. Going back to what one can ask students, staff can get to know whether they're familiar with any of the concepts of the syllabus and where and how they learned them. It is likewise as important to discuss expectations about assessment and modes for learning and make it clear in the syllabus what kind of strategies are involved in the particular module. And again, as a consequence, one might ask whether the students have taken this kind of assessment before, for example, an academic essay or a long in-person exam. Are they familiar with citation standards, for example? If you ask all these questions, then you know what supports to offer and where to refer your students. Now, from a systemic approach, acknowledging cultural diversity will mostly involve internationalizing the curriculum, so dealing with things from the curriculum design side, importantly, not just electives or options, but the core of a program. It's a really broad subject, and there are resources available within UCD and elsewhere. There are some links on the slide, which you'll be able to access later. But the principle is to just embed the global perspectives into the curriculum. That is, use diverse sources, use comparative approaches, invite students to consider how culture shapes disciplinary knowledge. This may also involve inviting virtual mobility. And such practices are not only beneficial for international students who, in consequence, might feel more represented, but it is likewise to benefit of the entire student body. Here, the term internationalization at home might be useful. Again, you'll find more resources on the teaching and learning site, but essentially it highlights how the benefits of international university education can be extended to all students if done right.
Thank you so much, Oakley. You really touched on very crucial points. Thank you so much. So, picking up from what we spoke about earlier regarding the extra complexities for international students, One of the most problematic areas shows up for the students' connection and communication, particularly when talking about language. This part was mentioned by Oakley, but I want to like highlight or touch on other points like communication. Like communication goes far beyond words. It's not just like language itself, like humors, sarcasm, irony, all these don't travel across cultures. Like academic communication styles, for example, differ too. And what feels direct and confident in one culture can feel rude in another, or something that feels respectful can come across as dismissive. And obviously, it is very different to try to express yourself in a second language and communicate your ideas clearly. Sometimes you feel like when you express yourself, you're smaller. You're not expressing yourself rightly. You just don't put the words that you want to say. And there is also the cultural common ground. For example, the everyday references that hold Irish student life together, the television, sport, like programs, music, or local politics can be entirely unfamiliar to an international students. Also, it's worth mentioning that friendship also itself works differently across cultures. And underneath all of this, like sits what I would call the confidence gap. And I met like, and maybe I experienced this myself, like you are afraid of saying the wrong thing or mispronouncing or being misunderstood. So many students become very good at masking this, like looking confident on the outside while like feeling quite lost inside. So here also we have finally the support barriers. Um, Most Irish students already arrive with like their established support systems, like family, friends, accommodation, professional connections, knowing how to navigate the local job markets or international job market. But this is not the case for international students. They struggle a lot with this and they feel lost in all of these and overwhelmed with all these like topics and things they have to do and accomplish. So what we can do about this? Let us discuss some ideas here. Firstly, maybe we can slow down, like slow down and be more aware of our communication style and how it can be misinterpreted by students of different cultures. Also, like creating a space where a student can say, I didn't follow that without feeling embarrassed. Like I faced many situations where like there's a huge talk about something and I can't figure out what they're talking about or what is this. So slow down and engage with culturally also like backgrounds, slow down and engage with culturally responsive pedagogy, like invite students to bring their own ideas, references, experiences, and so they can express their own experience into the classroom. Slow down and design assessment inclusively, as mentioned by Oakley. Move away from like timed exams or like offer choices where we can write reflections, online discussions, small group tasks before the full class discussion, because like not everyone can think out loud in a second language in real time or understand or process the language in real time. And I think this is not a measure of their intelligence or their engagement. It's just like a different language. For me, for example, to read something, it takes me a double time to understand what is this text is about, or what is the meaning behind that, or connecting multiple readings together. So this is a huge part. Also, slow down and try to build connection intentionally, like a 5-minute pair discussion at the start of a seminar. It wouldn't be a waste of time because it gives those international students relationship infrastructure, like when they are assigned in a group, and like not letting the students self-select into familiar clusters, like mixing. And I think this is one of the most ways of breaking social boundaries with students. Also ask the students to bring their own context into discussion. That doesn't just support international students alone, but it enriches the room for everyone. And here beyond the classroom, there are some wonderful resources at UCD, the Career Center, the Writing Center, and again, UCD Teaching and Learning and UCD Societies. And simply like pointing students toward these more than once can open door they didn't know they existed. And we will like have a separate slides for these resources in the end.
Hey, great. Thanks again, Nama. Here I'll zoom in on connections and interactions, but in the context of the university classroom specifically. Among all the implications of student diverse educational backgrounds, one has also to consider the ways in which standards around student-teacher interactions differ across cultures. And while it does not directly concern the curriculum, it is just as important as internationalizing the curriculum, for example. Here I'm going to draw from my experience of studying abroad for a semester last year a little bit, because that experience like really reminded me of all the little ways in which learning experiences and methods differ from one country to another, even within Europe. These are, for example, different levels of formality in interactions. In some countries, academic environments are more hierarchical, in some less so, and student might thus not really know whether they should address their instructor by first name or their title and surname, whether that be in person or email. There's also the question of when and how to engage with staff. Like, is it okay to have a more informal chat? Is it okay to ask a question before or after class? Are there office hours? How do you even like get into them? There might be also different rules around student engagement. That is about asking questions or speaking up in class. We should also consider how there are different learning platforms and differences in balance between contact hours and self-directed learning. Finally, just work ethic, work-life balance, that also differs greatly across different countries and culture. And that is all to say that there is hidden curriculum around very basic in-classroom interactions that international students might have not been exposed to beforehand, as opposed to domestic students who are just like coming in with that knowledge of how to interact, even if the shift from secondary school to university might be big. There is like the basis for it. Okay, and again, how do we account for all of that? The number one rule here would be transparency. It is really important to make expectations around classroom communication very, very clear. So one should let students know how they should address them, specify when students can talk to them, when they answer emails. Again, you can specify whether students can come into your office hours, should they email in advance, make an appointment, outline your expectations and preferences, but also ask students for their expectations and preferences, those that come with their educational international background. And who knows, maybe that can give way to some new intercultural class contract. Importantly, one should approach differences in communication with respect and dignity, and remember that standards around student-staff interactions can vary within or regardless of cultures. They might be specific to one school or even one teacher. That's why it's even more so important to clarify all of the points I mentioned above. Again, it is important to not to make assumptions, but instead, and not to make students make assumptions due to that vagueness. Oh, sorry, just one final takeaway. Thank you. Yeah, so the final takeaway here would be that to not to just like make things transparent and clear, but to do that repeatedly. So put it in slides, on Brightspace, in communication, press play and repeat. Okay, thank you. Okay, and sorry. Now we'll just leave you with some key takeaways. Just own it, live and learn. It's all process. And mostly just ask students, don't assume things, and kind of just like embed that culture of like being curious and respectful into your own classroom, and foster that student-staff intercultural dialogue, whether that be the staff just like outlining their own diverse educational experiences, or giving way to have students explain theirs. It's all, as Nama has put it really nicely at the beginning, to have that like aspect of being like with different cultures, that constant interaction, dialogue, kind of symbiotic relationship.
Okay, thank you, Oakley. For me, if there are two things I would love for you to take away from my part today, are these. First, like sharing a language is not the same as sharing understanding, and I think that is something can be easy to forget in a busy room or classroom. And second, a cultural relative stress, cultural shock, homesickness. These are not personal weaknesses. They are not signs that a student is like, these are not signs that students are not intelligent, but signs of that they are struggling because they are not like they need time to adapt. They are completely natural responses to an extraordinarily difficult and a new transition. And let us like be honest about that. To travel to another country to pursue your education takes immense courage. It's never a small thing. And those students sitting in the classrooms have already done something remarkable just by being here. And what makes the difference is when we work together, students, staff, and the whole institution, to create this environment where that a journey is met with understanding, with care, and with the right support. I think we all have a role in that, and together we can make it better. Finally, like we don't feel like we shouldn't feel like we should fix everything, but we can make at least one student feel seen, and this is sometimes can be enough to change their entire experience at the college. Thank you.
Okay, and now we'll just leave you with some teaching and learning resources around intercultural learning, and there are plenty. And besides that, you of course get the slide deck, so don't worry about losing any of the links. There are like also some in the chat as well. And yeah, thank you so much for listening.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Nama and Oakley. That was absolutely fantastic. I'm sure everyone has got so much out of that. What I'm going to do is stop the recording.